Hi everyone, I'm LadyJenevia, and I stand with Ray Fisher. I had my previous DCEU video already scheduled to go live before this particular story came out, and I figured if I was willing to address the negative, hypocritical treatment of directors by a certain section of stans, the story that I'm going to be discussing today was far too important to ignore. Given the fact that a lot of what's going to be discussed today involves allegations, let me just stick that disclaimer on here before I get into everything, that all of the things that I will be sharing are the words of other people that are speaking about their experiences with Joss Whedon, and as a result of what they're sharing, I have formed my own opinions on all of this. On Wednesday, July 1st, Ray Fisher tweeted the following statement. Joss Whedon's on-set treatment of the cast and crew of Justice League was gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. He was enabled in many ways by Jeff Johns and John Berg. Accountability is more important than entertainment. I am not making this video to spread gossip or to claim to know more than I do. I oftentimes get exasperated when I see people who pride themselves on being entertainment news reporters, and they'll post tweets about, well, I heard this and I heard that, because from my point of view, it makes you look like you're trying to make yourself look more important and connected, and even if you have heard something or been told something, if you're not going to be Ronan Farrow and publish a real piece of journalism addressing these injustices, then stop talking about how you heard something, especially if you're not going to back that up with naming names and taking action. If it wasn't obvious by the title, I do believe what Ray is claiming, and that is my opinion. Karen Bryson, who played Victor Stone's mom in Zack Snyder's Justice League, also tweeted her support and agreement with Ray's statement. She was not even in the theatrical cut because Joss Whedon not only did a hack job on the film itself, he was particularly aggressive in cutting out several non-white characters that were in Zack's version of the film and gutting out most of Ray's story as Cyborg. Numerous allegations have been made against Joss Whedon for years now, but like I said, I am not saying any of this to gossip. I will present some of my points and leave it at that because I do not want to give people like that so much of my time or energy. For context and a bit of backstory, I used to watch Joss Whedon shows many years ago. I don't have those shows fresh enough in my memory to nitpick in detail over every single plot point that raises alarm bells, but I do remember that there was a point on Buffy the Vampire Slayer where Spike attempted to Buffy, and even after that, Joss Whedon still had those two characters become a romantic couple. No. James Marsters, the actor who played Spike, has even spoken out against the way the storyline was written and executed. I've seen other people write up in more detail about how Joss Whedon has been terrible in how he treats his women characters in the material of his shows, so if you really want to go digging, all of that information is already out there. However, what I can talk about is Cordelia Chase. About, I would say, 15 or so years ago, I used to love watching Angel, which was a spin-off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The show was in syndication, so I wouldn't watch it on a weekly schedule. I would watch it every day on TNT because it was on every day. I think you could even watch multiple episodes a day, which, if you are very young, might not seem like a big deal, but this was before everyone had a million streaming platforms to binge shows on at the click of a button. So Cordelia Chase was a character that originally started as a sort of cliched mean girl character on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but when David Boreanaz got a spin-off series about his character, Angel, Cordelia was picked to go be a lead character with him on that show. However, Charisma Carpenter, who is the actress that played Cordelia, was treated horribly when she became pregnant while working on that show, and was consequently written off in a way that I do not agree with. There is a Telegraph article that transcribed Charisma speaking about this at DragonCon 2009 and also has the video of the panel embedded into the piece. I'm going to link that article and any other articles I will be referencing in this video in the description box so you can go and make sure that I am saying everything correctly. What happened was that my relationship with Joss became strained, she revealed at the 2009 DragonCon convention. We all go through our stuff in general behind the scenes, and I was going through my stuff and then I became pregnant. And I guess in his mind he had a different way of seeing the season go in the 4th season. It was my least favorite season, actually. I think Joss was honestly mad. I think he was mad at me, and I say that in a loving way, which is, it's a very complicated dynamic, working for somebody for so many years and expectations, and also being on a show for 8 years. You gotta live your life. And sometimes living your life gets in the way of maybe the creator's vision for the future, and that becomes conflict, and that was my experience. She also revealed that she was not told by Whedon or anyone at the WB that she wasn't being invited back for the show's 5th season. I actually got a phone call from somebody in the press, which really sucked. My understanding is that Charisma has made up with Joss since all of this happened, and I am certainly not going to invalidate her feelings about the experience and whether or not she has forgiven him for what he did to her, because forgiving him might have been something she needed to do for her own personal feelings and healing. However, just because she might have moved past it does not mean that I will think that he is not a toxic person when this is by no means the only infraction on his record. That entire Telegraph article has many of his infractions listed, so it is worth checking out if you haven't already and are not familiar with some of the things that have been written up about him. There are lists and citations of both issues with his material and the way that he speaks about the women he has chosen to be in his shows. The list is really long if we tally up his poor writing choices and sexist handling of his female characters and the women that play them. There are instances of him being creepily fixated on women's bodies when it comes to how he envisions and casts his characters. More than once, he has had male characters fall face first into the chests of women characters. It wasn't funny the first time, but for some reason you decided to do it again. Imagine if you actually had talent to write comedy that didn't degrade women in the process. Wouldn't that be something? Now, I'm skimming over the numerous infractions in his actual writing because despite the fact that there are plenty of examples, those are just the starting point. In theory, some people could try to make the argument that writing bad things doesn't necessarily mean that that's how you are as a person. But not only do we have the Charisma Carpenter incident, we also have his ex-wife Kai Cole, who spoke out against him in an article on The Wrap. There is misinformation out there, and I feel the best way to clear up the situation is to tell my truth. Let me begin by saying I am a very private person, and the act of writing this is antithetical to who I am and everything I stand for. Yet, at the same time, I feel compelled to go on the record and clear up some misperceptions. I don't think it is fair to me or other women to remain silent any longer. There were times in our relationship that I was uncomfortable with the attention Joss paid other women. He always had a lot of female friends, but he told me it was because his mother raised him as a feminist, so he just liked women better. He said he admired and respected females. He didn't lust after them. I believed him and trusted him. On the set of Buffy, Joss decided to have his first secret affair. 15 years later, when he was done with our marriage and finally ready to tell the truth, he wrote me, "When I was running Buffy, I was surrounded by beautiful, needy, aggressive young women. It felt like I had a disease, like something from a Greek myth. Suddenly, I am a powerful producer, and the world is laid out at my feet, and I can't touch it." But he did touch it. He said he understood. I would have to lie or conceal some part of the truth for the rest of my life. But he did it anyway, hoping that first affair would be enough, that then we could move on and outlast it. Joss admitted that for the next decade and a half, he hid multiple affairs and a number of inappropriate emotional ones that he had with his actresses, co-workers, fans, and friends while he stayed married to me. Despite understanding on some level that what he was doing was wrong, he never conceded the hypocrisy of being out in the world preaching feminist ideals while at the same time taking away my right to make choices for my life and my body based on the truth. He deceived me for 15 years so he could have everything he wanted. I believed, everyone believed, that he was one of the good guys, committed to fighting for women's rights, committed to our marriage, and to the women he worked with. But I now see how he used his relationship with me as a shield, both during and after our marriage, so no one would question his relationships with other women or scrutinize his writing as anything other than feminist. Reading through Kai's account, I believe her, because it aligns with him repeatedly trying to present himself as a man who advocates for women to be represented well in fiction, and yet there is a consistent and total inability to do that in his actual work. Read through that Telegraph article that breaks down his terrible treatment of his women characters and actresses, read his leaked Wonder Woman script, which is a total abomination, and you will see that the substance just isn't there. Conversely, people who work with Zack Snyder all rave about him. I already compiled and presented receipts from actresses that have worked with him and presented those in my video essay about Zack Snyder's Justice League, so you can watch that if you haven't already, so I don't have to repeat myself to the people that have already heard me read those. Ray Fisher coming forward with these claims does not surprise me at all. We are in a period of a cultural shift where more people that have been wronged by those who have more power than them are feeling empowered and safe enough to be able to come forward. But when it comes to Joss Whedon, these are all things that have been on display and in the public sphere for many years already. People love to preach about separating the art from the artist because they're selfish. They only want to think about their own personal enjoyment of content and not think about the people that have been harmed by the people who have power and abuse that power. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I stand with Ray Fisher. I believe him. If you don't think there's enough evidence to convey exactly what type of person Joss Whedon is, I don't think you've been paying attention. This is not one actor making allegations against him. This is a larger pattern of behavior that is more than enough for me personally to make up my mind on the matter. There are plenty of men who run sets that have great reputations among the people that work with them. This is not cancel culture trying to bring men down. This is about people who abuse their power being held accountable. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not interested in repeatedly talking about this. I've now shared my thoughts. These were already my thoughts before Ray came forward. If you are only watching because I'm talking about a dramatic news story, cheers. I hope you hold people to a standard of basic human decency in how they treat others. If you are one of my regular viewers, my new video on The Boys is coming up, so keep an eye out for that. If you would rather watch videos about the actual DCEU content and not drama, I've got a whole playlist with multiple video essays about different DCEU films. That's really what I prefer to make instead of videos like this. If you would like to follow me on social media, you can do so by subscribing to my channel and following me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Vero. See you in the next one. Bye.